let's go to the urban plan around the Kalinago Plaza. Now, there are two places in Dominica that maintain the original Kalinago Plaza, where the houses are all around the central plaza, and that is the Rosa Old Market. And we have all the descriptions of Pelabat going and visiting Thomas Warner, Indian Warner's mother. She's about 100 years old, he says, and she is totally naked, and she's sitting there, so this great respected woman everybody's visiting, but she's there in the plaza, around in the buildings, around in that central landing place for Roseau. So we know that one. Here is Roseau on the 6th of June, 1761. There is a line drawing which was actually painted while the battle was going on. With the capture, you see over here, the transport ships are landing soldiers, and the ships are bombarding Roseau. And up on the Morne, there is the kind of French commander of the small settlement, and they're battling with him up on the Morne Bruce, which hasn't been named Morne Bruce yet. It's called Guy's Hill. And there behind the top mast of that ship over there is the plaza, is the old market. And then there's a street going up, and that is, in those days, Larry Ligley's. It's Church Street today. And it goes up, and they've drawn in, just at the top of the mast, the first Roman Catholic church in Roseau. And so it gives you an idea. The other thing is, all of these buildings are basically one-story buildings. There are a lot of tikais. They're scattered all over the place, and they're following the footpaths from the plaza. So you have your plaza, your landing place, everything, and then you will take a footpath to go up the valley and go across the Rosalie. You take another one to cross the Rosa River. You take another one to go down to. So we map it out, and here are our footpaths. So one is for landing, then you have the one that goes straight up, that has become King George V Street. You have the one to the church, Notre Dame de Beauport, Our Lady of Fairhaven. That's where you go and pray after you come from a stormy sea, or you pray before you go out onto the sea again. It was very much a church for sailors. And then you have the one going down to the south. Then you go to the route that crosses the river. And these roads still exist today in the crooked central section, which is known as the French Quarter. I think it's something actually that all of us invented in the 1970s, when all this concern about traditional housing and all that began. But it certainly is. It's the old French Quarter. And then when the streets reach Cork Street, then is when the British military took over and subdivided everything in grid-like squares. So you have your crooked section of Old Street, Hanover Street, and winding up to go to Fort Young and that kind of thing. And Castle Street and Fort Lane. All of those little crowded streets are from that original pattern of footpaths and the houses going between, the pedestrians going between the footpaths. And then you have, this map is 1787. By that time they've decided Portsmouth is unhealthy, and they've got to come down to this fine inferior place called Roseau. Well, what to do? That's what happened, and that's why we're here. And we depend on artists. We've got this wonderful painting by a few years later. Well, actually, in the 1780s, the map was around that time. We have Agostino Brunias. I forgot to put his name there. Italian artist who came out as the artist to Sir William Young, who was the first British governor of Dominica, and he decided to stay, remain here, married a woman, free woman of color, and they lived up in Cochrane, and they're the original origin of the Bruni family, Bruni families. So he painted this marketplace. Everything is there, and do you know, there is one house that still survives from the 1780s. That one, but falling apart up there on the stilts, with the stilts over the road. And you can almost bet that where he was sitting was in a little shop. But we have an old photograph, very early photograph. Instead of Wolsey Edwards' shop there, which is 3 stories or 2 stories if you remember, that was where he was sitting to paint this picture. And Galleries Hotel is always buildings over there. And the main Roseau Market House is that building there, which was rebuilt in 1810. So that's a wooden version, rebuilt in 1810. And then further, you get to where the Royal Bank anymore, it's now the National Bank, NBD, is over on that side there. And he paints the scene. And so you're seeing the way in which, once again, the colonial houses then adapt across from the plaza for the Kalinagos, it then becomes this colonial center. And the market continues, the buildings get more elaborate, and the traditional methods of building, once again, stone on the base, if they're not sitting like this little one here, right on the ground. It's stone, first story, and then the upper wooden stories. They were very suspicious of verandas. You had no warning for hurricanes. You needed to shut up within 15 minutes of a storm, and so they would put these galleries along the road with the stilts on it so it would catch the breeze and you could relax there. The guy here is Edward Sheriff Daubeny, like Imre, another amazing guy. Of course, grammar school students, Dominica grammar school students will know him as the person that made major contributions towards the grammar school and the first building that was not rented. The grammar school started in a rented building, which still exists in Independence Street. But he was really a very great foresight. He felt very sorry for the vendors in rain and shine, and there in his will, he left money for the construction of the covered area that you see there, the Daubeny Market area. And then, of course, in the other one, you see where the Galloway House still is, over in that area there. And then on the other side, you have where Nasset was. It was burned down in April of 1974. C.G. Phillip, which was taken down, demolished, to set up the Royal Bank. But it was the core of business in Dominica, and you can see the houses reflected the important position which those buildings in commerce and also the high society people that lived upstairs, who owned the shops and the businesses. And what was important for these places was that they were the town residences, in many cases, for the planters across the island. So they would have a town base, and they would then have their plantation run by a manager. The reason my grandfather came here in 1913 from Barbados was to manage the potter's property, which was at Wannery over in La Plaine. So they had lived in Wannery, managed Wannery for the ladies that lived down in Old Street. And so it was all over the island. I mean, there was this Jan Johnson, you know, Melrose House, beautiful house. And there's Jan Johnson. She owns the whole of Rosalie, 2,081 acres, the whole of Castle Bruce. And she's there in the 1930s, 40s, about 40 years old. And she has never, ever visited her plantations. And my aunt, Mrs. Agar, had to beg her. She said, you cannot not know these places. They're yours. And so then she walked across the island. They visited Rosalie. They went and visited Castle Bruce, and she never went back again. That's how it was. But that's all the stories related to Roseau and the networks. And now we deal with Kalinago. Kalinago is like a mini town, but it's also a great example of the layout of one of these towns that is not really planned, and it emerges also from the Kalinago Plaza, We'll deal with that in a moment. It's mainly a community for the smallholders, what we call the petit blanc, the poor white and free people of color who own small plantations in the heights of Kalinago, and then in the weekends they would come down and socialize and go to mass and all that kind of stuff. And it was supposed to have in 1820 an amazing amount of taverns and pool tables, 14 pool tables. I don't know if you have 2 pool tables in Kalinago now. But anyway, it was quite a place. And you see a change happening in this old photograph from the 1920s. The thatched houses still exist. And then a little further on are the galvanized roof houses. People have moved up there on the main road in the middle of Kalinago. The Shillingford house, if I had a flashlight, is over there, double roofed, and it's down there in the 1920s. Okay? And there's the church, where the church went through many different phases, the Kalinago church, I'll do that later. But Kalinago is a marvelous place. You drive past it now, but if you just stop, go and park somewhere in the middle or walk into it, it's a fascinating place. And the plaza is now called La Place d'Armes. They say La Place d'Armes. But of course in the French it was La Place des Armes, the place of arms. That was where the militia would exercise and all. And over there is lowland South America, old area settlement. This is to give you an idea of what the Kalinago Plaza was like, so that their houses were around the central plaza where they would do their dances and all their other entertainment. And here are pictures of the La Place d'Armes today. They put in a few buildings like they want a stage and this and that, but before it was much more widely open. And of course, like the Rosa Marketplace, it was during the slave period a place of execution. So in 1786, Joseph, he is killed, executed by burning alive for assisting Maroons up in the heights. So this, I kind of recreated this drawing to indicate what was happening here. And so, you know, one of the things is with these central zones, like whether it's the old market in Roseau or the plaza in La Place d'Armes in Kalinago, these places must be guarded. Nobody must come and decide, like, at one time they wanted to put a car park in the whole of the old market, and this and that and the other. But it's an ongoing thing, because now I understand they're going to put a high fence around it or something of that nature. So you never know, you never know. Kalinago has its own little special types of picais. These ones have a little, all of them have a little veranda, and they have done the fretwork. This, of course, is the Shillingford house. Once again, A.C. Shillingford. No, this was T.H. Shillingford. There were so many of them. T.H. Shillingford, remarkable guy. Judith has left.
No, I'm here.
Yes, Judith. A remarkable guy. He really controlled the West Coast. And there's a joke about, which actually Judith's mother told me, as to when they were redoing the church in Kalinago, and that they needed things like, you know, windows and font and altar and all that. So the priest went to Lafayette's T.H. Shillingford, and he said, Mr. Shillingford, you know, I'm redoing the church and we need things for it, and we need a font. And since most of the children I baptize are yours, since most of the children I baptize, I think it would be very good if you would donate a font. So if you go into the Kalinago church, you'll see this fantastic marble font used in France or somewhere. And in large letters around it, it says, this was donated by Mr. T.H. Shillingford. So he had this central house there. Unfortunately, this photograph was taken before Maria, and although the house stood up very well, the veranda went, including all that lovely fretwork. So it has just been replaced with a rudimentary veranda plywood. But as you see, these are going to be lost from time to time. A new generation will come and decide they want to put it in upstairs concrete and get their dragon windows and all that kind of stuff. So you know it's going to go, yeah? Sometime.